Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to be working on this 2012 Ford Escape. We're going to be doing front struts in it, and if you need struts for your car, you're going to want to find the TRQ brand because they're rigorously tested and they fit perfectly every time. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is loosen the lug nuts on the wheel. We want to do that while the car is on the ground so the wheel doesn't turn while we're turning the lug nuts. This is a 19mm socket that I'm using on a 1/2-inch breaker bar, by the way. All right, so now that the car is up in the air, we can take our 19mm and we can spin off the rest of the lug nuts. With the lug nuts off, we can take the wheel off. All right, so right in here, we have a 10mm bolt that we want to remove because that holds the ABS sensor onto the strut. So we need to remove that. So we're gonna use a 10mm socket and a 1/4 drive ratchet. All right, hopefully we won't drop it. See, got it. All right, so let's pull this bracket out of the way. And then we need to remove this C-clip, which holds the brake line to the strut bracket. So you can do that with a pair of pliers. Just like that. Once that's out of the way, you can pull the brake line out of the strut bracket. The strut has a sway bar link attached to it, so we need to remove this nut from the sway bar link so that we can disconnect it from the strut. These things can be kind of tricky because what happens a lot of the time is when you turn this nut, the whole sway bar link threaded area will turn with it. That's why they put an Allen head in the center of it, so you can hold it with an Allen head and then turn it with the wrench. Where this is all new, there's a good chance I might be able to just get it with a 15mm socket and extension, but we'll see. Nope, not gonna work. So it looks like we're gonna need an Allen head to put in the center, and then I'm gonna need a wrench. All right, so I've grabbed a 15mm ratcheting wrench, and then a 5mm Allen head. Now, it's possible that yours are different sizes. This is a new sway bar link, so it's possible that yours are different sizes than this. Let's see how it goes. The ratcheting wrench definitely helps a lot because doing a normal wrench one at a time, it'll take you a long time to do this. All right, looks like the nut is now loose, which means we should be able to push this through. Yeah, just like that. All right, so now let's pop the hood. Put up the hood prop someplace. Here we go. And then up here on the strut tower, you'll find 4 nuts that hold the strut in. We're gonna go ahead and remove all 4 of those. All right, so I'm gonna use a 15mm socket and a 3/8 ratchet to go ahead and remove these. All right, we're on the last nut now, and when you remove this nut, the strut is gonna wanna fall down. So we're gonna wanna support that with our other hand, or maybe with a friend, or even a jack stand. And that way it won't fall down unexpectedly. All right. So here's the 2 lower strut mounts, or strut bolts. We're gonna go ahead and remove those with an 18mm socket. They're usually pretty tight, so you're gonna have to use all your muscle. All right, now both of the nuts are off, and these bolts should just push out. Sometimes they're rusty and they get stuck in there, so you can just give them a little tap with a hammer and they should pop right out. Once you get the second bolt out of here, the strut will become free of the car, so then you just have to wiggle stuff around to get it out. There we go. All right, now it's out of the car. Let's put this right back up in there. All right, so now we want to put the bolt back in the hole through the knuckle. There we go. All right, there's one. All right. With the bolts in, you can thread the nuts on. All right, so your strut needs to move upward into the engine bay, and all this stuff is pretty heavy, so you can do a couple different things to get it in place. You could put a jack and a jack stand under it, and that'll lift it up. Or you could take a pry bar like this and pop it in the strut and then lift up on it. And that'll help you lift it into place. So we're gonna go with the pry bar method. And once you get the holes lined up, you should be able to pull right up, and then you can loosely put these nuts on. All right, so now we got our 15mm socket and our 3/8 drive ratchet. We're just gonna go ahead and tighten these up. These are gonna be torqued down to 35 foot-pounds. So we got our socket on our 3/8 drive torque wrench, and we're just gonna tighten these down. All right, now it's tight. All right, so now we will slide the brake hose into the bracket. Now we'll put the clip on, and hopefully I'll be able to push this into place with these pliers. Yep, there we go. All right, so now it's locked in place. The brake line is back where it needs to be. The ABS bracket can go back into its home, into the strut, and we'll take our 10mm, slide it through this hole, and then we'll put it in just by hand first, because you don't want to cross thread these things. Now we'll just tighten this up with the 10mm socket. All right, so now we're going to just torque this to make sure they're both at 85 foot-pounds. Looks like I'm there. I put the nut back on there just to hold its spot. I'm going to put it right back here in the strut, and then I'm going to thread that on. Now once again, we're going to need to put an Allen head in the center and use a ratcheting wrench to tighten it up. All right, that is nice and tight. Whenever you do any sort of suspension work like this and you disconnect the strut from the knuckle, you're going to want to get an alignment afterwards, because your alignment is going to be different than when you started. There is a little bit of adjustment within here, and if you're doing a tie rod end, if you're doing any sort of strut work, you got to get that alignment. All right, so now we're going to pick up the wheel and put it right back on and throw the lug nuts on. All right, there we go. You always want to start all your lug nuts by hand, because you don't want to cross thread any of them, because once you've cross threaded the lug nuts, you have a really bad day. All right, we've got our 19mm socket and our torque wrench. So we're going to torque each one of these to 100 foot-pounds. Going to do it in a star pattern, and that way the wheel is torqued nice and evenly. All right, there we are.